system every now and again,
Yeah.
or turning it off where the Russians are. Has been a problem because the American military paid for Starlink.
Yes.
Like, they own it.
Well, they paid for it.
Well, yeah, there's a bit of a rumour that Elon is going to lose it, like, because he's been an unreliable partner.
Yep.
So it's a bit like General Dynamics will let you run their system for us. You know,
Yes.
you can screw us, but just don't screw us too hard.
Yep.
Right? And generally speaking, they don't care if they pay a bit of a premium. You know, it's all weird. But yeah, that's different. Like the Americans that have trouble directly providing satellites to Ukraine. You know, like without getting drawn in, but they can do it through a commercial provider.
This looks like it might be a high bit because it's got cloud right over it.
Yeah.
There's almost no cloud over there. This cloud over there is away, a distance away. Plenty of wind. Snow indicators.
Yep. In this case, like the school board, right?
Yeah.
That Bowser is private fuel for the school board vehicles only.
Okay.
So
There we go.
Mosbury said, you know, we've got school buses.
Yeah.
We need an office. There's a fucking petrol station, right? Instead of using a petrol station, a private one, we'll just fucking use our own. Yeah. Then we've got an office building.
Interesting to see if there's a petrol station.
Head
left
northeast
here.
toward Ramsey Street, then turn left onto Ramsey Street.
Well,
Because one of the things that Yakandanda did was the petrol station was going to close down.
I'll get the camera out because I suspect there are quite a few photos here. Like I think we can get some of the old cars and
Yeah.
can do that.
Do this.
May as well leave the lens cap off and just in here
Yep.
or something.
Okay, so what have we got? Yep.
So it looks like it. So those two things that are covered up, they look like they're old fuel bowsers to me. The two things in wooden boxes
The
with
right,
donkeys on.
yeah, and the two columns.
That's quite a pretty house too, isn't it?
Yeah. It reminds me of these your
Continue
open
on
top
US
fire truck.
95 north
What's
for
that?
130 miles.
These your open top fire truck.
Yeah. Take photos of anything around here while we go because it's quite a nice looking little place.
So this is what happens: is they have that boom in about 1904,
Yeah,
and you get the brick and stone buildings,
yeah.
and then there's a fire in 1913, I think,
Yeah,
and then there's some other stuff that goes on,
yeah.
and they give up. I think because most of the town has disappeared. I suspect the other thing that might have happened is that the Second World War started. And my father's father called England home, and he'd never been there. He was born
Yeah.
in Australia.
Yeah. No, I get that because it's like when they talk about recruiting foreigners and how that's dangerous and all that.
Yeah.
Well, most of the Australians in World War One were quite a lot of them weren't really Australians. They'd been, you know, people that had moved there, and they were Scottish and Irish and English as well.
Yeah. So there's a tall mountain around here somewhere. There's an article there about water,
Okay.
and they have to go and get water. They find this place where there's actually quite a lot of it. It's because there's a mountain that's about 9,500 feet high,
Yeah.
and it yeah. Yeah.
I'm thinking a lot of the haziness down in the valleys is just dust.
Yeah, could be. I wonder if that's the battery.
The what?
At one stage they build this 100 stand battery, which is a thing for crushing rock,
Oh, okay, yeah.
right? Now I was looking at this and thinking, I wonder where they got the fuel, because you would have had to run it with a steam engine.
Yeah.
And I just can't see them carting wood. Although that would have accounted for your Joshua trees.
Yeah.
But they're so sparse.
And you'd think if I were doing that here, this place would be fucking absolutely clear.
So I haven't heard of coal mines in California, but there would have been some somewhere.
Oh, you got Wyoming's really big for coal mines and stuff. Wyoming, Montana.
And at that stage, you cart coal across the range? I suppose you can.
Oh, yeah, but remembering they were connected to that railway reasonably early. And,
Oh yes, well the railway starts 1904, I think they started to construct it.
yeah.
The Borax guy starts around that time as well, trying to connect with the stuff in Death Valley. So that alkali, there we go. They had soda mines out here. I think it was one of the things they did at Rhyolite. Because it's so fucking dry.
It's around 89 degrees outside. That wind's quite strong.
That'll make life a bit easier. Angular hitch,
Yeah.
right? But they were reasonable size. They were both bulk carriers for, I don't know, lime or cement or something.
Yeah.
And reasonable. And yet I look on here and think, why don't people do more of that? These hauls are really long. I mean, there's fuck all between wherever you go and wherever you've come
Well,
from.
Australia's got the biggest trucks in the world. for that sort of stuff.
Yep.
And of course, you know, when you're talking sparseness, we're really sparse compared with a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of places.
Yeah, but I look here and go, okay, if you can take that sort of a truck
Yeah,
on the road you're on, why don't they do more of it?
yeah, that's what I mean. It's like I look at this road,
Yeah.
and it would make a lot of sense here.
Yep.
So a friend of mine, his son, who was in the army transport, when he got out, he was doing handyman work, you know, garbage removal and stuff. But when they moved to Cairns, he before he moved up there, one of his mates, we've got this contract to fucking haul stuff between Cairns and Darwin on
Yep.
these remote tracks.
Yep.
It's like a 2-week drive in each direction,
Yep.
and then you get 4 weeks off.
Right.
Or you do 2 weeks, fly home,
Yep. Yep.
you do the next 2 weeks or whatever. So he does that now. Mostly delivering to Indigenous communities and stuff along the way.
Yep. Sort of, I've seen some pictures with that.
Yeah.
There was one video I saw, and there were about 5 cattle trucks,
Yeah.
so each with at least 2 trailers on the back, and there was this greasy section of road,
Yeah.
and it wasn't so much that they got logged, it was just so slippery they couldn't
get
they
traction.
couldn't,
Yeah.
and so they're just in a row
Yeah.
waiting for it to dry.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's blowing around us, load of dust.
I can remember my grandmother. Oh, yes. So my grandmother, who lived in Werrimal in the Mallee in Victoria, and then I had a girlfriend who spent part of her childhood in Lake Cargelligo,
Yeah.
and she told the story that her mum would say, if you went into a place in Lake Cargelligo and it was dust free, the lady of the house had just dusted it.
Yeah.
And my grandmother, who was very house proud, she talked about you get dust, and they would also get what were they? There was some sort of insect plague,
Yeah, oh yeah.
and block up the air going into the oil lamp,
Yeah?
and you had to keep pulling them out because otherwise the light would go out. Right? Yeah, so I look here and go, yeah, it's awful.
And you know, you see, 160 acres for $10,000 here.
Yes.
And people go, oh, I'm going to go live off grid, right? And stuff like that.
Yep.
But fuck me, like,
Well, I was looking at it myself because, we came down, and there was a settlement right off to the left
yeah,
in the bottom of a valley like
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
right up against the foot of the mountains there, and I'm looking at that going, you're a fucking long way from nowhere here.
that's exactly right.
Right? Now, okay, I mean, Dolan Springs wasn't much different.
No.
And I thought, all right, you can do this stuff that you're going to do and live free.
Small livings out of that. But at 100 acres, no one got by.
No, well, that was what it was like in Werrimal. They got a square mile, which is 640 acres.
Yeah.
But their problem is they had no irrigation.
Yeah,
And they were further west than Yenda.
yeah,
One of my grandmother's long-term friends, that family walked off their land,
yeah,
and they ended up in central Victoria because 640 acres wasn't big enough.
Yeah.
First World War, and it was mallee country, so the mallee produces this bloody lignotuber.
Yeah, yeah.
So you chop down the mallee, grow it in Western Australia for oil, and they've had some attempts at using it.
The only big things you've got to do are like aircraft and ships, and hopefully you'll have an industry that can do it by then.
So the first bit of stimulating the stuff, that was included in a thing called Race to 2030, I think it was.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a research program that Fiona did some work in. And to be quite honest, a lot of that was boondoggled by young academics.
Yeah.
Now Fiona and me, I wasn't working in it, but she would come home with the stories. And I'd say, I'm sorry, this was done in 1973 with the oil crisis.
Yeah.
And a whole pile of the things that they were looking at. Right?
Well, it's a bit like America in '73, made huge strides during that period.
Yeah.
Only for when the administration changed over to have everything fucking ripped out.
Oh, well, the other thing too was that they did everything in a great hurry. So the bloke that talks about the aesthetics of wind turbines, he also talks about putting in wind turbines in that period. And I think he was doing something like 600 a week.
Yeah?
Yeah, and he said, this is not the way to do it.
No.
Right? And that's why in places like the San Almont Pass, you got a whole heap of little wind turbines. Why was that? Because that was what was available.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
And
you also got a whole heap of wind turbines with no fucking good. So there were a couple of designs of vertical axis wind turbine, and they weren't up to the job, so they would break. Then there were another couple of spectacular failures. There's one in Canada. The thing's not supposed to start. You're supposed to give it power to start.
Yeah.
And this thing was the biggest one in the world at the time. It was a 4 megawatt unit. Anyway, it said fuck that and started by itself.
Yeah.
The problem was that they then couldn't work out how to stop it.
Oh, yeah.
And it ended up, I think what happened was it ended up on no load, and the foundation wasn't good enough, and it just basically ripped it apart.
Yeah.
Because they're all new, right?
Yeah,
how many vertical axis wind turbines of this size have you built?
No.
One.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of that sort of stuff. By the time we got to the San Almont Pass, which would have been before we were married, so late 1990s, 1998, 1999, something like that, they were pulling out some of the small ones, because by that stage they'd worked out that the maintenance costs were the same for little and big ones. Those lattice towers you talked about, fewer lattice towers, better layouts of wind turbines within a field, so that you minimise the effect of the towers on the ones that were downstream. They did a whole variety of stuff. Biogas, which they're still pushing, right? There are people who are still saying, let's put hydrogen into the gas system, right? And I've looked at this and said, all right, I need to really think about this. But then I thought, there must be studies on this from town gas, because town gas, you had a choice about how much hydrogen you put into it. And I can remember problems with putting natural gas into town gas pipelines, because one of the things that natural gas had, it had no tar in it. and there were problems when they put the natural gas in, because it turned out that one of the things that was sealing some of the gas lines was the tar. And then you run into, well, I can remember that there are various problems from people using lots of varieties of town gas, which is basically a burnable gas created from coal or wood.
Oh, is this what you're talking about, like in England with those gas towers that they had?
The gasometers that they had,
Yeah.
they were in Australia.
Yeah, I never saw them.
No, because you might probably a bit young. So when I was a kid, they were still making town gas in Victoria,
Yeah.
and so we got a television, and I was in early primary school. So let's say that's sometime in the mid-60s, I suppose.
Yeah, he's
Tonopah?
Yeah, you
Yep.
better start taking photos, Clyde. No engine brakes.
Okay. Right, so this is... Okay, so there's a mine. And there's a ballpark. It's interesting. They've put grass in the middle of the ballpark, which is
Yeah.
lovely, except that's not the bit you use.
Yeah, I know. So this is the bigger casino.
Yep.
Um,
Oh boy, this looks like mining towns in Australia in some ways.
yeah.
And you've got all these footpaths that go everywhere with no houses in them anymore.
Yeah.
But
When
the
we
ca-
get into the centre of town,
Yep,
it's very sort of western looking.
yep. That looks western. Spare transformer and a horse-operated windlass.
Yeah.
Um, Tonopah Airport. Oh dear, that didn't go well.
No.
It's not a good day. Cabinets.
Now this is quite close to California, so I think it's mostly a gambling town. People come here on the weekends to
Okay,
do a
because
bit of fun.
all right,
Oh,
so-
so he's take a photo down the street here, because as we come in, because there's got some quite nice hotels and stuff here.
here's one. If only I knew what it was. Let's see if I can take a photo.
There's a laundromat.
Yeah, yep. Oh, the Mitzvah. It's a word I thought I wouldn't look up, so I might do that.
So all around the same time as that other town, 1906
Yep.
and stuff.
Yes, and so they built the railway line that went to Goldfields,
Yeah.
and then it came. At least one of them came here,
Oh, yeah, and that would make sense to come up from Vegas to Goldfields.
and there was that you remember I said they were building in opposite directions.
Yeah,
Well, they built one from here to Goldfields.
Yeah.
And Australia imported them from California.
Okay. A lot of discarded cars there.
Yeah. It's sort of it does really look like Mad Max, doesn't it?
Look, the Clown Motel. Bring in the clowns. That's the fun now. Oh, look at alien statues for sale.
I guess that's because they've run out of real ones.
Yeah.
There can't be that many of them.
What is, your motel
Petrol
fuel
station.
stop, and behind it your food.
Yeah. Well, when I was doing my my
Next gas 100 miles.
Yeah.
Pretty sure we'll get there on half. It's about 60% of the tank.
Yeah. When I was doing my MBA, they talked about that type of installation,
Yeah,
and at that stage it was growing,
yeah,
right? Accommodation, petrol, food, all and some level of supermarket.
yeah. Like when we were driving across the nation quickly after Trump's inauguration,
Yeah.
we basically followed the 40. Was it the 70 or the 40? Most of the way across, and most of the places we stayed were essentially, 3 types of hotel, all which were actually related chains
Yep.
around petrol stations and standard food groups
Yep.
to their affiliated food groups and stuff.
Carson City.
So Bishop's 114 miles. I drove from Bishop up here
Yeah.
and couldn't get a room.
Yeah.
Then I had to go back and go on. Fucking took me ages to find somewhere because I hadn't realised how much weekend traffic they got up here.
Okay. See this place on over here?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that looks like solar thermal, doesn't
It's
it?
solar thermal, right?
Yeah.
What I'm interested in is that there are partial foci either side of it,
Yeah, yeah, that's
which you
what I
can
was
see
just-
in the you see in the dust.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah. I wonder if they factored that in.
And like you're saying, some of these are quite early, so they'll, we'll have mistakes that weren't around before. But you're right, it looks like it's completely focused on each side as well as.
It's not. It's just the overthrow because it's
Yeah.
just. I think you've probably got a completely surrounding field of mirrors.
Yeah,
It's just interesting to see the effect.
hopefully get a bit of view of it as we go along.
They're pretty impressive. told you the story about what they did with the one in ANU. They built their new mirror.
Okay.
So they had built a thing called the Dish,
Yeah.
and then they worked out a much better way of doing it, built much more accurate mirrors.
Yeah.
And they built where all the mirrors were the same, whereas on the original Big Dish they were custom made.
Yeah.
And so they built this thing. Keith Lovegrove was telling me about what it was like when they first tried to test it. So they built a very simple target, which basically consisted of 2 sheets of steel,
Yeah.
slightly separated with water circulating through them. Right? Anyway, they stick this up in the frame. They've got the water circulating through it, and then they bring the mirror onto focus.
Yeah.
Almost immediately they get film boiling because it's so intense. Target.
Yeah.
It insulates the steel and the steel melts.
Yeah.
And they went, fuck, or words to that effect.
Yeah.
And for a while, I don't know whether it's still there, but at one stage at the base of the thing, they had that target, and it's got these 2 sheets of steel, and one's okay, and one's got a bite out of it.
Yeah.
So they then did the next test with moonlight, because what they were trying to do was to find out how good a focus they'd actually achieved.
Yeah.
So the first test had said it's pretty good. The next one said, yeah, probably the best of any system they'd found. But I don't know what's happened with solar thermal. It's dead in Australia.
They've still got one at Port Augusta.
Okay, because that we're going to have this great big installation out there.
Yeah.
But the price of solar panels fell off the roof, and then people lost interest in Australia. But I know they've been doing stuff in Spain.
Yeah. Spain does a lot of quite innovative stuff like solar chimneys as well, or thermal chimneys.
Yep. A group of Australian engineers.
Yeah.
They wanted to build one at Mildura.
Yeah.
It's going to be a high.
Yeah. I was teaching my kids about that.
Yeah. But again, cost of solar panels went down. Wasn't worth your while. Pretty interesting though.
What do you think these things are?
Sorry, what?
The poles. They've got poles like black poles.
Like this one up here.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe it's when they've got roadworks or something.
I'm wondering if, because they're doing roadworks, it looked.
So we've been stopping quite frequently and taking our time, and it's still got us there at 4:25 at the moment.
Well,
So our next turn is in 91 miles.
okay. So,
And I think that's the next place where you can buy food and fuel.
all right, well,
That's about halfway. Remember, push the button.
it's fine. It's all right. It's all everything I want's on that.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Oh, that's what I was looking at, and I've got it, and it comes up here too.
I wonder if they're processing mineral sands up here. So this is distance to destination.
Yeah.
So in 91 miles, we'll have 120 miles to go.
Yeah.
Okay. And so so what you're saying is that we're about halfway now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I mean is about halfway to where we're going.
Yes. Yep.
Yes. there too. Like, I think we've done, because it all up it's like 398 miles
Yeah.
from start to finish. So, you know, give or take a bit halfway there. I'm glad we stopped in golfing.
Good.
And you know those three little buildings? That I think that's all new, but it's been done with three inside. It's got old worldy type, you know, mining equipment in it and stuff. You know,
Right.
all these.
Part of the problem with Goldfields was
I don't think I've ever heard of large chunks of Australian towns, you know, burning down from, you know, like a bushfire that we talk about here.
there've been, well, sorry, as far as I know, there were some fairly substantial fires in Melbourne,
Yeah.
in the central business district, in the 19th century.
Oh, okay. I don't ever remember reading about it in Sydney, but then maybe Sydney had more stone and brick in it.
Quite possibly.
Your fire started at the bottom of the hill, and they had a lot of close together buildings
Yeah.
that it might have just spread up the hill.
Well, I guess the other thing that happens is that you start having fire regulations that do things like say you will build in stone or brick.
Yeah.
What it does.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at this going, all right, we're only in the middle of the day here.
Yeah. The wind tends to be worse in the afternoon.
Yep, the temperature's whatever it is.
It's 94.
Salt flats here. But I was just looking at the wind and thinking, I don't know what it's like driving, but I'm assuming that you're constantly correcting to the
Oh,
left.
it's a little buffy, yeah.
Yeah.
But not too bad because it's, you know, a sedan, not a, like it was in the van, transit van, I reckon I'd be really noticing this.
Yeah.
I can hear that it's windy. Like,
Yes.
you know, is the window a little bit open or something?
Back there I could see, I think it was 4. He just looking around, thought, it's hot.
Yeah,
Oh, there's one there.
yeah,
There's another one over there.
yeah. Now we've just got to hope they don't turn into tornadoes.
No, I don't think they will.
No, I don't think they will either.
But that one road,
yeah,
right,
yeah, it's pretty bad.
I wouldn't have wanted to meet.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Well, yeah, it took away your vision.
Yeah.
The thing is, I knew that I was just going here. I'd almost stop, you know, like get really slow.
Yep. And there's
And yeah, they're all over the place.
yeah. I can remember somebody describing when they were in the Gulf War.
Yeah, being able to do that
Yep.
near the runway.
Yep.
Okay, so what is it now? It's 1 o'clock. So a few more hours of heat to get in, and the winds will be picking up more and more. So they're saying in the, you know, the areas where tornadoes normally form,
Yep.
that they're actually rolling that way, and then one of the ends goes to the ground.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's happening is in the upper layer you've got the air flowing one direction, and the other layer you've got air flowing in the other direction, and they create, you know, like a barrel.
Yeah.
So you know the other day they had a fucking tornado in Chicago.
Yep.
But I think they were saying it's the first ever recorded tornado in Chicago.
I wonder if you can get that on the edge of the lake, because that's where they are.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that they say they form horizontally, because these ones do not.
Oh, no,
They're
ones,
forming vertically.
Yeah. But that might be the difference between the two as well, because what they're talking about is you get the warm, moist air from the Gulf being dragged up.
Yep.
And the cold, like jet stream air going down. And when you look at the United States, you've got this big mountain range on
Polar vortex in summer, but I don't see any reason why it can't come south.
Oh no, it does. It has happened in recent years, and that's, you know, when I was talking to you about that dwelling activity.
Yep.
I was watching. Was it? Someone was talking about it. I think it might have been on the ABC, but when they were talking about this, and at the moment they're worried that the Humboldt current in the Atlantic is going to collapse soon.
Yep.
And that could actually spark an ice age in these northern,
Yep.
particularly North America and Europe.
Yep. Let's look at what the Humboldt current feeds. I think it goes into the Gulf Stream, but I'm not sure. I don't know why we're worried though. I mean, what we've decided, as far as I can tell, is that it's much more important to have coal and oil resource extraction and the burning of that than it is to try and deal with the planet.
Yeah.
Well, and even Clive Hamilton saying apparently, oh, we'll have to learn how to adapt. And I go, yeah, well, we're going to have to learn how to adapt. I'm unclear why we need to make it worse.
Well, look, the thing is, we turned it all off today. If we could turn it all off and switch over today,
Yep.
the damage has been done. It'll take maybe 20 or 30 years to run its course.
Yep.
And I, as a cleaner, just for the air, it's better.
Yep.
Right? And I said, so I don't see why you know, most cars now, when you scrap them, they don't have wrecking yards like they used to, where there'd be piles of cars,
Yep.
and so you could get spare parts. They just smelt the fucking things and,
Yep.
you know, take out the different, you know, alloys and metals and reuse them.
So I don't know what they do with the non-ferrous stuff. I know that it was becoming increasingly difficult to get mild steel.
Yeah. And that's what they were saying, you know, the government's done some funding to make Whyalla more environmentally friendly as a smelter. And a lot of it's recycling and, you know, electrical assistance. And treeless sort of plains, aren't they? Now those Joshua trees are supposed to trees, but
I guess that's what happens in Australia. You get to the tree line, and if you're going from south to north,
looks like it's got something standing up on top of it.
Also looks a bit cattle.
Yeah.